Once you've established that kind of positioning, you get people into that childlike, impressionable state, because they're like, subconsciously maybe, but still it's like, wow, look at them. They get to go and do all this stuff. Like, they have all these resources. People take them seriously. They're respected. They're loved. Like, they have the beautiful, perfect body and this and that, and they're admired. And with the sort of, again, that childlike, hypnotic quality of, well, if I act like them, then I can become like them. And I can have the things that they have. And I can do the things that they do. I can have the freedom that they have. And I think that's what's going on. I think that's how we are being engineered. And honestly, that feeds right back into our topic from our previous episode of make someone's life shitty enough, and they will beg you for your virtual world or your imaginary hero. They will honestly ask you before you even present it to them. They'll be like, hey, you got any virtual heroes? You have a headset I can, like, you know, jerk off to? Because I'm in like a 4x4 foot box.
Welcome once again to Make Art Not Friends. Today on episode 10 of the podcast, we have a lot to cover, so we're breaking the discussion into two parts to make it more digestible, or at least we hope it will be. In part 2, we continue to discuss archetypes in celebrity culture, especially as they apply to escapism and the perversion of hero worship. We also touch on the spells such as escapist archetype worship can create in the mind, and how to break such sleep spells. Finally, we touch on the anthropological roots of these ideas before watching the strangest attempt at self-expression ever uploaded to the GooTube. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Make Art Not Friends, and we hope you enjoy.
In lieu of, in the vacuum of, you know, the tribe all got together and we went up on the cliffside at sunset and we all shot our bows and, you know, tried to take down a gazelle, that doesn't happen anymore. Nothing like that happens anymore. You know, there's no the hunt. There's not even really the harvest. We have no connection to what makes life work at all. Our food literally shows up. We literally go into a supermarket lined with corpses of flesh beings and fibrous vegetal beings with some liquids, and we just pick things. And it's like someone somewhere, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like if you ask kids these days, where does food come from? They say Walmart and Dollar Tree. Like, I guarantee you a lot of them have no fucking idea.
I mean, I've been in the restaurant industry for going on 20 years now. I've had people who have been professional servers, and not like at Applebee's, but at, like, you know, small chef-run restaurants, literally say to me things like, you can make mayonnaise? You can make half and half?
Right.
Literally 30-something-year-old professional
I believe it.
waiters.
I don't wait for shock on my face. I mean, yeah, right. Yeah. Well, anyway, so check out where I'm going with this. And we kind of touched on this in our Marvel episode, but so what you end up with is this, let's take this archetypal consumer of such media, right? Of which, honestly, you and I are kind of examples of. So I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like, you know.
I readily admit that. I'm with you.
Right. And whatever. And that's why it was great. We're doing this podcast. I don't know. So, yeah, it's kind of shooting myself in the foot. But it's like never quite necessarily grew up in the whatever the fuck that means anymore, right? And and so we look to myths. I mean, everyone looks to myth, whether they realize it or not, but we may be a little bit more emphatically. And what do we find, right? Or what does anyone find, right? What does someone that is like, wow, okay, my life, I'm not prom king quarterback, like, iBanker guy. That's kind of where I'm coming from, right? Okay, so most people, most men are not, summa cum laude, Yale Law School, whatever, there's not enough room for everyone to be that guy. I would never want to fucking be that guy to begin with. Okay. So in lieu of that, and I talked to a lot of people I know had this reaction, not just men, but like friends of mine that are women as well, where they kind of had this, I feel like this is a common Aries thing too. Like this happened to me where I was like, oh my God, not only am I not the best, but I can never be the best. Like it's never gonna, like I maybe if I played my cards differently, like if I really, like if I had devoted myself 100% to like this thing and specializing this thing, but once that realization comes, you're like, I'm not hot shit. Like I'm actually maybe somewhere on the north side of mediocre. Like what? But there's people all over the scale, and there's always going to be, and so that knowledge is devastating, I think, in many cases, and it precipitates nothing psychiatrically significant, but a little bit of a break with reality, enough to be like, wow, it'd be cool, a nice story about someone that's not me doing some stuff that I can't do in my real life, which is key to seeking out any kind of media or art, right? So then what is available, like you said, what is there? So what is there? Well, you've got Iron Man, Captain America, you've got American Horror Story, right? You've got Harry Potter, you've got Wolf of Wall Street, right? You've got The Walking Dead, right? You've got The Purge, right? And you've got these like, Liam Neeson, James Bond, whatever. And then in the music world, you have, for women, you have these like boyfriend a week, pop stars like Taylor Swift and Katy Perry, and who are like just awash in like satanic symbolism. Like Katy Perry cannot fucking blink her eyes without running into a fucking pyramid with an eye in the middle, or like a
and let's not forget the pinnacle of satanic female musicians, Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga. Oh yeah, Lady Gaga.
If you look into a darkened mirror and say her name 3 times, she appears.
Lady Gaga. Honestly, she takes the cake. Like whatever it is, she
and turns it into a hat and then dances around naked.
Right, and then pulls like a third term fetus out of it or something. Like
with
that's
a goat head. Yeah,
that's her aesthetic. She's like, oh, and then she vomits blood or something. But anyway. So, and then you have, right, so you have the music artists, and then for men, you have particularly, let's say, kind of low income or inner city men. You have this like trap, gangster rap, hip hop archetype. And so those are the heroes. And now these people who are behaving like just monstrously. I mean, like Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, I guess in The Walking Dead, they kind of have an excuse in that everyone is a corpse that's trying to attack them. But like, think about how these people are behaving. Like they're just shooting people right and left, having like crazy lascivious, affairs, and like, promoting, and yet, yeah, honestly, the Marvel characters look decidedly wholesome when you compare them to some of these other ones. And so that is, and anyway, so bear with me. So that is the dynamic that's established, right? Is you have these sort of eternal child spirit, never going to really grow up, kind of disenfranchised, like whatever, like podcasting or whatever it is, Uber driver, whatever the fuck, right? And they're like, they've kind of they've set up this dynamic of like, well, anyway, the point I'm getting at is I think once you've established that kind of positioning, you get people into that childlike, impressionable state because they're like subconsciously maybe, but still it's like, wow, look at them. They get to go and do all this stuff. Like they have all these resources. People take them seriously. They're respected. They're loved. Like they have the beautiful, perfect body and this and that, and they're admired. And with the sort of, again, that childlike hypnotic quality of, well, if I act like them, then I can become like them. And I can have the things that they have. And I can do the things that they do. I can have the freedom that they have. And I think that's what's going on. I think that's how we are being engineered is, and honestly, that feeds right back into our topic from our previous episode of make someone's life shitty enough and they will beg you for your virtual world or your imaginary hero. They will honestly ask you before you even present it to them. They'll be like, hey, you got any virtual heroes? You have a headset I can like, jerk off to? Because I'm in like a 4x4 foot box. You know what I mean? So I
have no internal life. I can't bring those to go back to the pre-Hellenistic Greek conception of the Olympian hero. That was not seen by the pre-Hellenistic Greeks, even if it was seen by the Hellenistic Greeks, which doesn't seem like it. That wasn't something that they thought Mount Olympus was the thing that existed outside of them. It was, they could go into that part of their mind where they might be in a 4x4 foot room, but they had this whole Mount Olympus of story and greater understanding of their own nature and their own self and how it is represented and depictable through these archetypal characters. And so if you are in a 4x4 foot room, you're not having to go to somebody else and say, please give me a little bit of, something to distract me. You can go, I have every story I could ever think of right here, 4x4 foot room or out in the middle of a huge big of nature. I can always go internally, and that's something that's been supplanted.
Which I think and again, it's really interesting because the internet is that, or could be, has the totally with discernment and which, sometimes I have a twinkle of at the best of times when it comes to the internet. Just with discernment and you have to know what to look for. That's the other thing with the internet. And again, like if you've never seen a fucking blade of grass, like you're not going to know, to type in the myth of Persephone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think, what I wanted to interpose here is, I think it's really, really crucial now more than ever. I think the most crucial thing is the act of creating art, because it breaks the spell a little bit. If you only consume, and I know you'll get on board with this, if you only consume, if you don't, as you said when you and I were talking, if you don't let that energy move through you, then that energy is being moved by other people who have an agenda for you. Chances are, right? And you are just going to be programmed by the expressions of other people's creative process, or the weaponization of whatever by the elite of the creative process of those people that are actually able to be creative in any meaningful way and produce this type of stuff. But I do think that the experience of channeling creativity and creative energy, at the very least, creates the opportunity to break the spell.
Yeah. And, that's the thing. The spell is broken when you keep the energy moving, so to speak. You allow it to kind of wash over you without absorbing it necessarily. You know, and take the, all right, this is the story that I'm being told, whether it's some high mythological expression of archetypal states of consciousness and different human emotions and proclivities, etc., or whether it's some substitution for something like that. Yeah, interesting. I don't really even know how to go about describing that. Give me a minute. Yeah, huh.
Take your time. I think you're onto something, though. I think this, for a topic that was decided upon
as we started.
Well, yeah. So, you know, hurriedly. This is honestly why I think one of the best discussions we've had. It's really, there hasn't been a lot of dead air. It's really been, I think we've really, there's definitely been like an alchemical distillation or refinement. Like I feel like whatever we set out to say, we're getting pretty clear on that in this
Yeah.
in this dialogue.
But then, yeah, I agree, and I think I'm surprised how much it ties back to, maybe not surprised, but intrigued, excited even about how much it ties back to the concept of the hero and the hero character that, you know, like a Bono or a Katy Perry. You know, Katy Perry might have been born called Katy Perry, but the entity that we all think of as Katy Perry is not the same as the person who portrays that character.
I think the thing is a far more fitting thing to call her than Katy Perry. Quite
frankly. Yeah, or sure.
So.
But that and the whole
especially now that she's
that whole idea is a perversion of that archetypal hero part of our mind that doesn't take Zeus literally, takes it as a part of a potentiality of our own mind.
Right. Or doesn't.
And now that's been ripped out, and you're saying that Zeus, that potentiality, is an actual person called Katy Perry or Justin Bieber or, you know, whoever.
Yeah, yeah.
And us not realizing, individually realizing that Justin Bieber is just a representative stand-in for the, you know, heavenly androgen, you know, or you know, the divine hermaphrodite. You know, he's the boy girl androgynous little whatever,
right?
At least at one point. Now likely like Britney Spears was, you know, the virgin, and then she became whatever else, other archetypes,
right? The Madonna and the whore. Well, she's
but
Columbia. All these blonde pop stars are all Columbia, the goddess.
Right. And sometimes they pass through other phases, like Isis turning into Nephthys or whatever archetypal goddess metaphor you want to use.
I feel like Britney Spears inadvertently put herself in an Akhenaten phase when she shaved her head.
And inadvertent is, maybe it was inadvertent.
Right.
I don't think there's much about those kids, especially that came through the Mickey Mouse Club.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That is anything other than a designed character. You know, that's the thing. I don't think that somebody like Britney Spears is a good example, that she's really been in control of her life.
Man,
she's been put through these phases. She's been made to emulate what was Akhenaten's wife, the shaved head, whatever. I can't think of that her name off the top of my head, but you know, to go from that Vestal Columba virgin to Nefertiti. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was in there. Nefertiti to whatever else she became, you know, these different archetypes, and I don't know what she's up to now, but
I just want to say I love Britney Spears. I bought her album when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I had just come here from Russia, and I think she is one of the sweetest, nicest people ever. And I think her music is really good, even if it's like really fucked up and filled with hidden messages. Like she seems like, to me, like an example of someone that just like got caught in this meat grinder that's like is actually just a fucking human being. Like look at what she's been through, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean,
I can't say for sure, but from everything I understand, she's like most of the Mickey Mouse Club kids,
Mhm.
a product of some type of MK Ultra monarch mind control programming. And the Britney Spears that's the nice person exists, but so do the other alters
Right.
of her
Yeah.
personality that have been set up. And that's
And
speculation.
like
I don't know for sure, but
Ariana Grande, I feel like is the most recent incarnation of that. She's just like a ooh, just
mhm.
yeah, like she's some kind of
And very, very Egyptian feature. I mean, you look at
yeah,
her
yeah,
face compared to,
yeah.
other pictures and busts and statues from Egyptian dynasties, queens especially. She has a lot of the same eye shape,
I
face
thought
shape.
for sure she was Middle Eastern. Like she's Italian though, which
Well, okay,
she's yeah. So, but yeah,
Mediterranean.
she's got that kind of like whimsical nymph
Hmm.
sex kitten, like MK Ultra slave energy very, very, very
Hmm.
prominently. Um,
And I mean, heck, her
and like
name,
Pete Davidson,
her
ugh.
name
Oh,
is
Ariana, right,
Ariana,
exactly. Right,
the
right.
goddess Ariana
Uh-huh.
Grande, which means large. She is a
Right.
larger than life version of the goddess Arion.
Even though she's like 4'11" or something.
Yeah, larger than
Yeah.
life in persona and
Right.
character.
Totally,
But yeah,
totally. Yeah.
absolutely.
And in vocal prowess. I mean, that girl can sing. Like,
Assuming it's her.
right. I
And
don't
we've
know. I
seen
do.
we've seen with Milli Vanilli and Britney Spears and others that just because they're on stage, just because they're on TV and you hear their voice doesn't necessarily
Right.
mean that it's them or it's not completely digitally altered. I don't know. Again,
Right, right,
broad
right, right.
speculation, but um and then at the same time, how would to go back to MK Ultra, how advanced is that kind of, could you put somebody here, could you put somebody into a hypnotic state or create an alter in their psyche and persona and their psyche? Could you create an alter and teach that alter very quickly how to be really good at singing? I don't know if that's beyond the capability of that kind of mind control technique, that sort of psychological uh,
Honestly,
but it
what
doesn't seem that far outside of the realm of possibility.
from what I've seen with hypnosis, you are just like, just like you can take off the the keyboard of or in the top of a laptop, and you just that's it. That's the motherboard right there. And if you have the right tools, which in the case of the hypnotist would be the knowledge of the subject, the knowledge of how certain things are done, how certain activities are accomplished, certain skills, then you can just go right on in and start soldering whatever the heck you want. And I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it and I've personally done it. I've done things with hypnosis that should not be possible.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up. I mean, like you can take a person who seems to be very unintelligent and inept and dredge things up out of their subconscious. And the only caveat is they have to have the language ability. You have to have the language ability to encode certain things to them, and they have to have the language ability to either understand or at the very least infer what you are saying to them. Language is the key to everything,
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff. That is why I at this point, I will only listen to classical music, instrumental music, or like very, 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 very few musics with lyrics because it's so invasive. Like, and music gets stuck in my head in a really unsettling way. Like I don't know if other people have that, then I don't know how they can go on listening to music with lyrics because it's like it'll be like days or weeks and I can't get it out, and I'm like this feels like I have a splinter and it's not enjoyable. Um, yeah, like I even will listen to some religious music is like really cool because it's just different. It's not designed to get lodged into your skull.
Mm-hmm.
It's more free form. Um, and that's
Yeah,
and
and certainly pop music, and by pop I mean popular top 40,
mhm.
that's just been designed for decades now to do exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, and speaking of it, when you said who was it you said in the late in like the late 1800s the what institute or the
the Cecil Rhodes Roundtable Group.
I was gonna say because how long has Tavistock existed? Because they've been like they're just neck deep in all this stuff.
That's a good question. I bet
because I just you said Cecil Rhodes and I just immediately like Tavistock popped into my mind.
I'm guessing it was around that time. Oh no, it was after World War II. Tavistock is British, but I feel like it had forerunner institutions. I have to look more into it, but the Tavistock Institute in its modern iteration anyway was 1946, 1947. But
right, but yeah, I'm sure it's a
I'm sure it had
that's like the fourth instar of whatever the original Caterpillar was, that term instar.
The Rockefeller Foundation awarded a significant grant that facilitated the creation of the institute. So even if it wasn't, some other thing that had a forerunner, it was before that called the Jones Institute or something. It was fed by the Rockefeller Foundation, put on its feet by the Rockefeller Foundation. So it had the pedigree, at least to a degree, of the Rockefeller Foundation.
The pedigree to a degree of the Rockefeller Foundation.
But anyway, you were talking about the round table, and Tavistock is, absolutely.
Yeah, just thinking. I mean, like my mom, like her. I feel like her entire personality is like coalesced around the Beatles and their music. Like no exaggeration. Literally, I mean, this woman grew up in the USSR. Literally, they were smuggling Beatles records, like buying them on the black market. I mean, they bought everything on the black market. It was like American jeans and, foreign music were like, like the Holy Grail, like the Ark of the Covenant. And, she was exposed to this and it literally rocked her world and her entire personality, her entire persona and way of being like formed and crystallized around this beautiful music that seemed totally innocent and and then and now come to find out that that music was like a fucking like a tailored virus or like a genetically constructed whatever sequence or mRNA you know what I mean? It's interesting. The only thing that changes is the medium. Mm-hmm. The strategy is always the same. How do we get into people and plant the behavior that we want? That's what it is.
And the medium changes, and really, in the last 100 or so years, it's just been the drive to find the most effective medium.
Well, and I think it's
and beam direct visual radio seems to be doing a good job.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say, I think now the medium has to be technological because people are just so fixated and fascinated and enthralled with technology. And so it's like really, I mean, I'm sure you're privy to some of this stuff with it. There was a THC episode. I feel like I mentioned this like every podcast where the guy was talking about how, this idea that technology is a new thing is a joke. In this realm, the idea that like advanced technology is new. You can look at like a lot of these ancient sites and megaliths, and there's like clamps and there's machining, and there's like places where they there are places where they screwed up and they accidentally bore a hole through like basalt or bedrock, and it's like, oh. Yeah, I suppose they just did that with, like a copper, a copper pike, like they just are perfectly even. And so the idea that, that we're like at the pinnacle of human evolution and this is the first time we've had this technology is really the height of hubris. And I think it's laughable. But so this guy was saying is that's why fiction and art are so crucial, because fiction and art are like the snake charmer in a way. They play the melody that draws the, I guess in this metaphor, the snake is like the, I don't know, like the magical creative kundalini energy that we all have, but we don't know how to access it ourselves. So they draw it out of us with these like sound and whatever codes, and with art, and really with sound, because that's what they do with music. And so they but also with fiction. And so because what we are able to conceive of, what we are able to believe in, they are then able to put out into the world. And so that's what this guy was saying. He was saying that like Jack Parsons, I know we've talked about Jack Parsons before, was connected to L. Ron Hubbard,
Mm-hmm.
the most prolific author of the modern age. I forget how many, some ridiculous amount of books. And so he needed science fiction writers he could not have done, because he was working with all these like glyphs and sigils and occult ancient shit, and doing the Babylon working, talking to Aleister Crowley, like all sorts of shit. But he had this thing, he was going to create rocketry, but nobody had ever heard of that. Nobody had ever seen that. And it just makes you wonder, like, because if you told modern people in the 20th century, oh, well, we're going to have flaming chariots that fly through the sky, they would say you're fucking insane. But if they said, because now we're in this age where everything is all about matter, everything is all about science, empiricism, chemistry, if you say, oh, well, I've invented a new type of fuel, it's a solid state rocket fuel, so it's the same chemical combustion mechanism that we use in cars, but it's going to create an action and create an equal and opposite reaction, creating lift, and lift this object up high into the sky. It's science. Then people say, wow, that's amazing. We love science. What a cool idea. How neat. And then you're able to flesh that out in the real world. Although in the past, it may have been, well, we don't know, but it may have been a fucking actual chariot, like a flaming chariot. We don't know, because that's what they were able to make work, because that's what people believed in. That's what fit with people's ideas and perception of the world. And I think the reason that science and technology are so integral and offer the path of least resistance now is because we've become so enlightenmented. We've become so empiricized, right? We've become so hardcore materialistic, like show it to me. I want charts and graphs and data and some face statistic on the side. That's the only way we will accept anything, because we've just become so, after however many centuries of, the literalist interpretation of Judeo-Christian scriptures and everything that comes with them, and then the dethronement of that and replacement with science, aka in many cases scientism, which is like the epitome of hardcore literalism. Like, there is only matter, everything is a particle, everything is a point, don't talk to me about spirit, etc. That's the only way we can accept this stuff. And I think I have the, hypothesis, and they say this a lot. If you go out into nature, if you go out to some of these villages, it's no accident that places like Haiti, where they just don't have any of the shit that we have, they don't have like, the megalopolis or the city with the skyscrapers. They don't have, they also don't have the electromagnetic fields like we do, but they don't have all that stuff. And magic is a fact of life out there. Mm-hmm. The voodoo priests and the witch doctors they're by far the richest people in the entire country, because everybody knows that magic is real. They fear it very much. And there's like fucking spirits everywhere, and they're like enslaving spirits, enslaving demons, turning people into zombies. That to them is commonplace. To us, and just a different way of thinking, to us, like walking around Times Square and seeing these gigantic LCD screens is commonplace. And so to someone unfamiliar with either thing, it's like, how are you doing that? How is that happening? I've never seen that before. My friend I was just talking to today, he had been on a mission trip to Haiti and to Jamaica. He was like, a lot of these people had never had their picture taken before. Like so they were really excited. They just wanted you to take their picture and show it to them, a lot of these kids, because to them that was magic. And so in that sense, magic, or the exciting thing that makes it exciting and alluring, is, wow, I've never seen that before, i.e. I never knew that was possible in the way that you just did it. So I'm entranced.
And it goes back to that Arthur C. Clarke quote: any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Yeah, and that's a good point. And it's not just Haiti and Jamaica, but certainly a good place. But still, lots of places in West Africa, some places in East Africa, the less so. Now, Indonesia certainly has a big, I can't remember what they call their witch doctors there, but yeah, when you said, they're some of the most well-off people.
Bali is haunted as fuck.
Bali, yeah. But there, there's a whole almost sector of the economy in Indonesia that's dedicated to essentially witch doctors, and they're some of the most well-to-do people. I'm trying to think of but even to the point where one of the most well-known murder cases that ever happened in Indonesia was centered around, all I can think of is I can't even think of the word for it, but it is centered around the husband and wife that were essentially witch doctors. I can't remember the name, but yeah, Bali. And then to say nothing of some of the, smaller Micronesian islands that still have extant populations, that have zero interaction with, quote, modern Western society. And there's less of them now than there were, 50, 70 years ago. But, before the interior of New Guinea was mapped, you can imagine what the belief structures and worldviews and spirits and magics and all their the conceptualization of the world that these people had in the high mountains of one of the largest islands in the world that didn't see Westerners or anything until, for example, a plane crash landed there in 1944 and had 3 American servicemen on it, or I think it was 2 women and a man. But either way, imagine them seeing that airplane crashing in the jungle. They'd never seen an airplane before, much less had one crash to the ground. But they would certainly, like you're saying, they would certainly probably have things that people who had never been in that culture would consider magic, the way that those people might consider this flying metal bird to be magical.
Yeah.
That's good. We hadn't really fleshed out the anthropology part of our podcast yet. So,
oh man, this is stepping on the toes of I have a plan for an anthropology podcast.
Oh, nice. Well, that's, and you'd mentioned earlier, and I think this thought came to me as we've been talking, but you had mentioned earlier that we're, getting away from art, talking about so many other things. To me, that's kind of the point to a degree, not just for this podcast, but for approaching our interactions from an individual. Each individual's interaction with the art and artifact around them is, crap, did I just lose my train of thought? What was I saying? Shit.
Well, you started.
Yes, okay, I remember that. The broader a view we have of the phenomenon and things that are going on around us, the more frame of reference we will have, the more context we will have to put a particular piece of art or story or novel situation, whatever, as someone participating in, the artistic experience, as well as someone creating the artifact that is meant to engender the artistic experience in the audience, in the observer. So the more, that's all a way of saying the old adage, the more you know, the more you can create. And so to just limit ourselves to talking about only things that fit in the art box do not expand our understanding of art and do not say, well, what about these other things? How are they related? How does it? And if we're not expanding, then we're keeping whatever we're producing, creating as artificers within the defined and preset and probably pretty unremarkable set of ideas that fit in that box. So yeah, to talk, any good creator, in my opinion, worth their salt ought to be concerned with the largest possible range of topics, because you never know what's going to inform a painting, a character, a symphony, whatever, as a creator. And I would say the same thing as an observer, as an observer of the artifice of art. You never know what thing that you were looking at is going to come in to inform the way that you interact with that artifact, and the art experience you might have with it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think my philosophy with that is, art is like we all have different ideas about what we're doing here as humans on this planet. But I think that we, creating things and exchanging ideas, and creating art and sort of art, that really takes on a life of its own and allows for influencing others and cross-pollinating of ideas and pathos in very much unplanned and unforeseen ways. Like, that is, as far as I'm concerned, the evolution of consciousness and the evolution of thought. Just the same way that, to whatever extent this is even really still happening, the evolution of human beings takes place through the shuffling of our genes when we, father, or, conceive and give birth to new generations, the same way. And then once you have a child or whatever, I guess, you maybe raise them for a couple decades or whatever, and then you release them out in the world, and who knows how they will influence the collective, who knows in what way they will contribute, or what, you just don't know. It's totally unpredictable. And you have to let go of that at some point. It's the same with art, I think. And that's why, yeah, I agree with you. The more topics it's like a wide bandwidth,
Yeah. And the more colors you have at your disposal, the more nuanced the painting you can create can become.
Right. And the more
and expressive and communicative.
The more emotions and scenes you're able to communicate and demonstrate and illustrate.
Yeah. That's why, it's like, yeah, you might be able to get by as a musician just learning the absolute basics. But the real top level musicians, interesting slip there, know about all of the different ideas in the way that sound can be laid out, whether it's knowing various modalities of music, or knowing different rhythm structures, or whatever. The best musicians have the broadest range, even if they're only working generally out of a small range. You can tell, this person's doing something very simple, but they're doing it on purpose. I mean, that's something I think is common with
and that's
musicians.
I'm really glad you brought up that point, because that's a big topic in the art, or specifically the fine art world, because abstract expressionism, like modern art, those are swear words as far as I'm concerned. Largely, or I don't know, or no, I shouldn't say that. I've done some people have referred to some of my art as abstract, but it's not splotches of color. You know what I mean? Like, I'll say that. Like, there's that's the other thing. I feel like, anyway, well, before I go off on that blind alley, there's shoot. Yeah, you were saying, right. So that's kind of like what they say is you have to learn the rules before you break them.
Yeah.
And you know, um yeah, it does seem like more and more people are not doing that, and they're just they don't even know the rules to know what rules. I would say to set the notion of rules aside, they don't even know anything about the techniques that they could be using, and they're just and there's something to that, but I think particularly with music and particularly with like this culture of like hip hop, like I don't know if you've seen those the Island Boys guys. Have you seen that?
Unless you're referring to the Lonely Island, then no.
No. Oh man, I'm gonna make your day, by which I mean I'm gonna ruin your day. 7.4 million views.
Well, that kind of appeal to the masses, it's got to be good.
Oh man, I almost want you to. Feel free to watch this and react to it while you're on the air.
All right, there we go. Now we can react to it.
Cause I'm an island boy and I've been trying to make. Oh, I'm an island boy. I'ma just island boy. I'ma just island boy. I'ma get key white gun. You're gonna keep that gun. I'll be just staring at the sun. I'm just out full gazing. I'm like, pull where I'm staying. They're like, you wanna be famous? I'm trying to be out the greatest. I'm gonna Florida boy. I get a real damn tropic. I'm like the damn on the topic. I'm an island boy. Put my vest on, yeah, like a wagwan man. Trying to make it to the top. I'm an island boy. I've been trying to make it. I ain't seen it with a gang slang. You ain't just slang no kind. And through the storm, through the rain. Cause we try home like a line. From the island boy, from the Caribbean. Que yo soy cubano. I'm an island boy. Put my vest on, yeah.
So
okay.
I know you'll never get. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to do that to you, but I think it's important. Yeah, so that's like a good example of it's like a musical cargo cult of like unintelligible simulacra. In that these kids like saw some garbled, unintelligible gibberish being spoken or sung by some dude with like, that looked kind of vaguely like they do now with like chains and shit. And they were like, oh my God, I have to, I want to be him. Like how can I be this like slurring, just drugged out, like just like slurry of a shell of a human and like be really popular because that's what's popular. And it's kind of like, the algorithm is leading people to what they will become. And then now they're doing this thing and it's like, and now other people are like, it's just a weird, but yeah, they were just like a joke, but now I guess like somebody made that into real music, whatever the fuck that means. And it has 15 million views on YouTube. So
well, you didn't ruin my day. I don't really know what I was looking at, so
right. If it's any consolation, your face at the beginning of that made my day.
Good.
Like just even though it was really small, just the abject confusion and like you looked like you were ill, and I was loving it. It was really special.